Kids these days. How many times have you heard that line come out of someone's mouth in a moment of frustration or bewilderment? We've all had misunderstandings and arguments with our elders, and maybe that line was directed at you the last time you heard it. The truth is, the generational gap is real and growing, and if we're not careful, we might mess a few things up because of it. Step 1 of solving problems is to get to the root, and that's what we're doing today. Here are 15 reasons the gap between the old and the young continues to grow. All right, let's do this. Number 1, difference in lifestyle. When it comes to our habits and the overall way we live our lives, there's no doubt it's very different from how our parents and grandparents lived. For most of us, the plans have changed. We're more focused on having a successful career and creating a comfortable life, so having a family young isn't really a top priority. We communicate differently and we're more connected to each other through the internet. We save time by paying our bills through apps and shopping online. These changes aren't necessarily bad, but it requires older generations to adapt to a lot of tech they may not have an interest in learning. Number 2, children are pressured to live according to parents' expectations. This may be hard to admit, especially for parents, but it's easy to slip into projecting our dreams, wishes, and expectations onto our children. We want them to be better than we are and to have more success in life than we did, but many lose sight of just how much the world has changed since they had this dream and fail to realize it might not even align with what their child wants in life. At the end of the day, the truth is that success comes in all shapes and sizes. Parents get to live their own life, and children should be allowed the same opportunity to realize their own dreams. Number 3, communication breakdown. No matter what generation we come from, it can sometimes be hard for us to communicate with each other. Misunderstandings are common, and the vulnerability required to express yourself fully and authentically can be kinda scary. But being scared and doing it anyway is a superpower, right? The only way to get better at communicating is to practice, and practice often. Examine how you feel in certain situations and with particular people. Learn to set healthy boundaries and listen as much as you speak. It's just a matter of time, effort, and patience to bridge communication gaps. And speaking of, number 4, a lack of patience. Generally speaking, it's easy to explain why younger generations tend to have less patience than previous ones. Technology, while helpful in many ways, has done a number on our attention spans and created an attitude of instant gratification. Without patience to get through the more difficult parts of leveling with one another, communication will continue to degrade, which is something we're seeing lots of lately. Number 5, different jobs and average incomes. We might be living on the same planet, but we reside in an entirely different world than the ones our parents grew up in. Seriously, 40 to 50 years ago, nobody could have predicted being a content creator would become a lucrative career. Content didn't even carry the same meaning back then. As the world transforms and different needs and niches emerge, new jobs are created and people are paid according to the value they can provide to the market, not how many hours they grind. Quite the contrast to how things worked in the past. The trick is to adapt to these changes and embrace positive progress. Otherwise, the generation gap will just continue to widen. Number 6, mistakes are always negative, bad, and undesired. Rather than being seen as a part of a standard learning process, older generations often view mistakes as unfixable, damaging, and worthy of punishment. But this view on life and failures in general doesn't take us very far. It actually holds us back. Younger generations are kicking this mindset to the curb with a greater understanding of mistakes. They're just an organic part of the process and only a problem when they're repeated. This might not match with the elderly's general opinion on making mistakes, but that actually carries us into number 7, a lack of understanding. And this isn't necessarily about not understanding someone's opinion, more so not understanding the conditions and environment that led to someone developing that opinion. It can be easy to start an argument with someone who has a contrary vision on a certain subject, but here comes that old Tumblr quote saying that everyone has a story behind it. As the world changes, so do the values we are raised with. Instead of labeling something good and others bad, it's important to just make an effort to understand how those opinions came to be. Nobody says you have to adopt them yourself, but understanding where they came from will help you to communicate more effectively and respectfully between generations. Number 8, comparisons. A lot of intergenerational conflicts start with, "When I was your age," and we're sure you've experienced that opener at least once, right? But the thing older generations don't always get here, it's basically apples and oranges. Too many things have changed to try and make those kinds of comparisons. We get it, okay? You bought a house and had 2 kids by 30, but that house only cost you $10K, Grandpa. Each age group and ultimately each individual has their own values, beliefs, goals, and resources, and it's more than okay to politely remind people of this as needed. Number 9. Difficulties to adapt. Especially during the last few decades, the world has been constantly transforming at a pace that can be quite hard to keep up with. Apart from technological progress, climate change, and our overall lifestyles, as new generations appear, new mindsets are created. For some age groups, mainly those who are older, it's harder to adapt and keep pace with these changes than it is for the youngsters. The elders often lack the patience to learn, and the youngins often lack the patience to teach. But patience on both sides is what's going to help bridge the generational divide. Number 10. Respect for others. This one's kinda tricky because older generations are conditioned to believe you respect your elders, and of course, that's true, but the younger generations do look at things slightly differently. Are these elders being respectful of you and your feelings? Are they disrespecting others in their quest to be respected at all costs? Because kids these days are wise to abusive patterns and behaviors in ways previous generations were not. This is a generation of mass healing. Can you feel it? Respect is a two-way street. You have to give it to get it. And when it's not there, it's fine to respectfully remove yourself from that situation as an act of self-care. Making a habit of respect has a lot to do with bridging the generational divide, and we believe the easiest way to do it is to realize that a person's value is not related to their opinions, which tend to differ greatly among age groups. And speaking of habits, check out our video 15 Habits to Improve Your Life for more ways to be a better version of you than you were yesterday. Number 11. Biased opinions. This is something that always causes trouble between people, and when it comes to connecting with others, our biases have the power to derail everything. Biased opinions usually come from difficulties in understanding situations, either through a lack of context or a lack of knowledge. Some generations are more likely to develop biased opinions than others, especially if they have difficulties adapting to the world's transformations or they lack validation. Anyway, just a matter of patience and calmness to overcome these hurdles. Number 12. Easier access to information. Anything we're looking for now is just a click away, and this is definitely something older age groups have needed to adjust to. When coming from a universe where trustworthy information could only be found in libraries, it might be difficult to accept new sources. Many have also been duped by misinformation online, making things even more difficult for them. Not to mention the fact that in the past, older generations were the smartest and wisest, which is no longer the case straight across the board, and that's hard for some people to wrap their minds around. Number 13. Different values. We feel like all the marketing and communications people can vouch for this one. The difference in values is what makes each generation unique and eventually what defines it. And since we have so many research resources available on how each age group behaves and what they believe in, we wonder if we couldn't use the same communication strategy that marketers do, but not in an effort to spin issues and convince them of anything, just to improve our overall communication with them. Can't hurt to try, right? Number 14. Different political or religious views. This one's an eternal issue that leads to gaps between people and sometimes even makes them never talk to each other again. Religion used to strictly guide our lives, which isn't the case for as many people these days, so personal conflict over religion isn't as common as it used to be. But politics? To be a woke citizen, there's just no escaping it. People belonging to older generations tend to be a bit more status quo conservative, while the youngsters are typically more in support of progress and change. Discussing politics and religion isn't the taboo you were taught. We believe it's important to have these discussions respectfully. Just be smart about choosing when and where. Nobody needs Christmas dinner to take a nasty turn. Number 15. Different generation, different priorities. There's no surprise that different generations don't have the same priorities and life principles, but that isn't a bad thing. Compared to our parents, we're more interested in building successful careers than having kids young. We're less traditional and we adapt to changes way faster than they did. But older generations have a stronger sense of community and foster closer familial relationships. Both sides of the generation spectrum have plenty to teach each other. And on that note, Aluxer, let's wrap it up for today. But before you go, we're curious. Who do you think has more work to do when it comes to bridging the generational gap? Older generations or younger ones? And why? You can join the conversation in the comments. We always love seeing what you have to say. And of course, you know there's a bonus waiting for sticking with us until the end. Number 16. Taking old things for granted. It's crazy how we do this without even realizing it. As society constantly evolves, we tend to take earlier inventions and developments for granted. Take the internet, for example. Here we are on the cusp of Web 3.0 with the metaverse, and from this point in history, it can be pretty easy to look past all the developments that even made this leap possible. We spend so much time with a forward focus that it gets harder to remember how it's all connected. And while we're not suggesting you spend all your time considering past developments that paved the way for future ones, just that it's important to have awareness of the fact that previous generations worked on these projects too in their own way. Remembering this will help you to mindfully bridge the age gap.